I never imagined I'd find my 19-year-old granddaughter living under a bridge, cradling a crying baby and believing I had been dead for 2 years. But there I was, standing in the rain beneath the overpass, my heart breaking as Madison opened the tent flap and stared at me like she'd seen a ghost. She was rail-thin, exhausted, clutching that tiny bundle like a shield. When she whispered "Grandma," her voice cracked, and then she collapsed into my arms, sobbing so hard the baby began wailing too. In that moment, I made a promise no matter what it took, I was going to bring them home and make sure whoever had lied to her paid for it. 3 days earlier, my life had been quiet, ordinary, and predictable. Retirement in Minneapolis had suited me just fine. Morning coffee on the porch, evening crossword puzzles, the occasional phone call from my son Derek, who had always been distant but polite. I had no reason to think anything was wrong until I received a Facebook message from a woman named Crystal Williams, Mrs. Henderson. She wrote, "I think your granddaughter needs help. She's been asking about you at the shelter." My blood ran cold. Madison was supposed to be away at college studying nursing, living the life Derek always assured me she was thriving in. My fingers trembled as I typed back, "What shelter? Where is she?" An hour later came the reply with an address downtown, followed by words that stopped my heart. "She has a baby now. Says her dad told her you passed away 2 years ago." I couldn't breathe. Derek had told her I was dead. Why, I drove downtown the next morning, rain beating on the windshield as if the sky itself was furious. The homeless camp under the freeway was larger than I expected, rows of damp tents and weary faces. Crystal met me at the edge and pointed to a blue tent. "She's been here about 6 months," she said softly. "The baby's about 4 months old." I walked carefully through the mud until I reached the tent and called softly, "Madison." The flap opened, and there she was, my granddaughter, my flesh and blood, with hollow eyes and a dirty towel wrapped around the baby. She blinked at me in shock, then whispered, "But Dad said—" He showed me the obituary. That lying snake. Derek had gone so far as to create a fake obituary to convince his own daughter I was gone. I knelt right there in the mud and told Madison I was very much alive and that her father had lied to her. She broke down completely, clinging to me like she was afraid I'd disappear. When her sobs finally slowed, I told her to pack what she had. We were leaving. The relief on her face nearly undid me. On the drive home, she kept reaching over to touch my arm like she couldn't quite believe I was real. Back at my house, I helped her shower, fed the baby Emma, and let Madison rest. As she finally relaxed for the first time in months, she told me the truth about what had happened. She'd gotten pregnant in her junior year of college, and the father had walked away. When she told Derek, instead of supporting her, he told her she had shamed the family and that I would have been furious. Then when Emma was born, he told her I had died and left her nothing in my will. My heart broke all over again. I would have moved heaven and earth to help her, but Derek had deliberately cut her off from me when she needed me most. And then Madison told me something that made my stomach turn. Derek had said he was using funds from my estate to pay her tuition, but the money never came. She eventually got kicked out of school, and that's when her life spiraled. My estate, while I was alive. My hands shook as I realized Derek hadn't just lied, he had been impersonating me. After Madison and Emma fell asleep, I spent the next hour on the phone with my bank, my financial advisor, and my insurance company. What I learned made me sick 6 months earlier. Someone had tried to claim my life insurance policy using a forged death certificate. The claim was denied, but it meant someone, Derek, had gone so far as to falsify medical records, signatures, and legal paperwork to make it look like I had died. I was no longer just a grandmother rescuing her granddaughter. I was a woman whose son had committed fraud in her name and stolen from his own child. As I watched Madison sleeping peacefully for the first time in months, I realized Derek had made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated me. The next morning, I was waiting at my lawyer's office when they unlocked the doors. I had known David for years. He handled Frank's will when my husband passed, and when he saw my face, he ushered me straight into his office. "Tell me everything," he said. By the time I finished, David was pale. "Margaret, this is criminal. If Derek forged a death certificate and tried to collect your life insurance, he could be facing felony fraud charges." "Good," I said flatly, "because I'm not just going to stop him, I'm going to make sure he never has the chance to do this to anyone else." David nodded, already pulling forms from his filing cabinet. We'll start with revoking the power of attorney he's been using. Then we'll put a freeze on every account he might have accessed. For the next 2 hours, I signed paper after paper. My hand ached, but with every signature, I felt my strength returning. David also helped me set up a new trust that named Madison and baby Emma as my sole beneficiaries. If anything happened to me, Derek wouldn't see a single cent. When I got home, Madison was feeding Emma on the couch. She looked up anxiously. Was that about Dad? Yes, I said, sitting beside her. And I need you to know something. He can't hurt you anymore, or me. I've taken back control of everything. Tears filled her eyes. I don't understand why he hates me so much. I didn't ask for this to happen. I took her hand. He doesn't hate you, sweetheart. He's scared. Scared of losing control. Scared of losing the image he built for himself. That doesn't make what he did right, but it means his choices say more about him than about you. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept picturing Derek's face when he found out he no longer had access to my accounts. I wasn't afraid. I was ready. Sure enough, the call came the next morning. Mom, what the hell is going on? Derek's voice was tight with barely contained anger. The bank called me this morning. They said I'm no longer listed as your power of attorney. That's right, I said calmly. You can't do that. I can. And I did. Effective yesterday, you no longer have access to any of my finances, my medical records, or my legal documents. If you try to sign anything in my name again, Derek, I will press charges. There was a long silence, then a low growl. Who put this in your head, Madison? My voice went cold. No, you did. The day you forged a death certificate for your living mother. The day you told your daughter I was dead and let her live in the streets instead of calling me. Mom, don't I snapped. Do not call me Mom like that word means anything to you right now. You lied. You stole. You abandoned your own child. And now you're angry because you lost control of me. He cursed under his breath. You're making a mistake. You're letting her manipulate you. She's always been dramatic. You're projecting, I said evenly. I've seen her with my own eyes. I've held your granddaughter, Derek. She was living in a tent under a freeway because of your lies. If you want to have a relationship with either of us, you're going to have to earn it, and you're going to start by telling the truth. His voice cracked with sudden rage. You can't just cut me out of your life. I can, and I will if you don't change. I hung up before he could answer. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of Derek's temper. Madison appeared at the doorway, worried. Was that Dad? Yes, I said, exhaling. He knows everything now. And he's furious. But that's his problem, not ours. She sat beside me, Emma in her arms, and we just sat there for a long time, listening to the baby's soft breathing. I didn't know what Derek would do next. Maybe he'd fight back. Maybe he'd try to smear me. Maybe he'd go silent. But one thing was certain, the days of him controlling my life were over. For the first time in months, I slept soundly that night. The storm didn't take long to hit. 2 days later, I was coming back from the grocery store when a neighbor flagged me down. Margaret, I hate to bother you, but there's a man knocking on your door, been there for 10 minutes. My stomach dropped. Was he tall, dark hair, maybe mid-40s? She nodded, looked angry. I parked fast and hurried up the walkway. Derek was on my porch, fists jammed into his pockets, jaw tight. We need to talk, he said the second he saw me. I think we've said enough, I replied, unlocking the door. He followed me in without asking. The old me would have flinched, but I set my groceries on the counter deliberately and faced him head on. You went too far this time, he said, voice shaking. Freezing my access. You humiliated me at the bank. They called me a fraud. That's because you committed fraud, I said evenly. His face darkened. Do you have any idea what this looks like? My own mother turning against me. You turned against me first, I snapped. My voice echoed off the walls, sharp and clear. You lied about me being dead. You let Madison suffer just to keep control. And then you tried to steal from me. You don't get to play the victim here, Derek. He flinched, but his anger was quicker than his guilt. I did what I had to do. You were getting reckless with your money. Madison would have blown through it all. That was never your decision to make, I said. His voice rose, but mine didn't. I held my ground calm and unshaken. You think you can just cut me off, he said bitterly. You think a few legal papers make you untouchable? You'll come crawling back when Madison drains you dry. I won't, I said softly, because I finally understand something. Controlling people isn't love, Derek. And love is not what you've been giving me. He stared at me like I'd slapped him. You can stay for dinner if you want. I added, my tone softening just a fraction. But if you ever forge my name again, if you ever threaten Madison again, I'll call the police and let them deal with you. Those are the terms. He opened his mouth, closed it again, then turned and stalked out. The screen door banged behind him. I sank into a chair, breathing hard. My hands were steady, but my heart was pounding so loudly I could feel it in my throat. 10 minutes later, Madison texted me, "Dad just called. He's furious." But he didn't yell at me this time, just said he needed to think. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, "Let him think. We're not afraid anymore." That night, I lit a single candle in the kitchen and sat in silence, letting the stillness settle into my bones. For the first time, I didn't feel like Derek's daughter. I felt like my own person. It was a week before I saw Derek again. I'd almost convinced myself he wouldn't come back at all when I heard a knock one evening. Not pounding this time, just 2 quiet raps. When I opened the door, he was standing there in a wrinkled shirt, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "I'm not here to fight," he said. I stepped aside. "Then come in." He stayed standing, hands shoved in his pockets. "I've been thinking about what you said, about control not being love." His voice caught on the last word as if it were heavy in his mouth. "I don't know how to stop trying to fix everything," he admitted. "I spent so many years taking care of things after Dad left, after you got sick, after Madison's trouble. I don't know who I am if I'm not holding it all together." I gestured for him to sit, and this time he did. "You don't have to hold everything together," I said gently. "You just have to hold yourself. The rest of us were allowed to make mistakes. We're allowed to fall apart and put ourselves back together. That's how we grow." He nodded, staring at his shoes. "I was wrong. About the bank, about Madison, about trying to force you into a nursing home. I was afraid." I reached across the table and covered his hand with mine. "So was I. That's why I let you control me for so long. But I can't live in fear anymore, Derek. Not of losing money, not of losing you." He finally looked up. His eyes were wet, but his jaw was no longer tight. "I don't expect you to trust me right away," he said. "But I'd like to try again. Without the control this time." I smiled faintly. "Trying is enough, for now." We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just sat together for a long time, the quiet between us no longer sharp, but soft, like the space before a seed breaks the soil. When he left, the house stayed warm. Later that night, Madison stopped by with Emma. We had tea, and Emma curled up on my lap, telling me about her latest art project. I listened, really listened, feeling every word settle into me like sunlight. For the first time in years, I wasn't living on someone else's terms. Derek's anger hadn't broken me. Brian's betrayal hadn't broken me. Losing Frank hadn't broken me. I was still here and I was free. Whatever came next, I would face it with open eyes, open hands, and a heart that finally belonged to me. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.